Hi, this is Tracy Sinclair here at Alaska's News Source. Thank you all for joining us. We are expecting to go live out at Joint Base Elemendorf-Richardson. There is a Veterans Day ceremony that is going to be happening here in just a few minutes at the National Guard Armory. Now, we were originally told that it was going to start at 10:30. My understanding from our crew out there is that they have shifted it to 10:45. So we are going to be on just a little bit of a hold, but then Major General Torrance Sachs will be coming out to do this Veterans Day ceremony to honor the men and women who have served in the armed forces, and it is going to include an announcement of the 2024 Governor's Veterans Advocacy Award recipient. So we're really excited to do this. I want to thank all of the veterans for their service. We will be here in just a few moments, so please stick with us, and as soon as our crew is able to go live, we will bring you that shot. And again, I apologize. Looks like it's going to be delayed for just about another 10-15 minutes. So we will be live here as soon as it comes up. Thank you so much. I'll jump back on here while I have you here. We also would love to hear and recognize the veterans in your life. So if you go to alaskasnewssource.com, there is a link at the top of the screen that shows, I'm going to see if I can pop it up here real fast. At that link at the top, submit photos and videos. If you have a photo not professionally taken, one that is personal, that is taken by you, we would love to see it. If you submit photos and videos, please go in there and give us the pictures of your veterans and give us just a little bit about them. As Nancy Smith just said on our Facebook post, my dad, Ketch Ketchum, a World War II veteran, passed away at 101. Longtime Alaskan, very well known, the Ketchum name here in Alaska. So Nancy, thank you and your family for your service. We thank all of the veterans in Alaska and across the country for their service on this day. So thank you very much. And again, we will be joining this award ceremony, this presentation, as soon as it comes up. And there will be an award in it. Of course, it is designed to honor the veterans for their service, but also we will, as I said earlier, we will be getting an announcement of the 2024 Governor Veterans Advocacy Award recipient. That will be made at this time as well. So we'll rejoin here as soon as this signal comes up. Thanks. And just to jump on here in case you're just joining us, the reason that we are a little bit delayed is that the ceremony has been delayed until 10:45. So we will be bringing that to you live as soon as it is available. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for your patience sticking around with this. Now, the first official Veterans Day was on November 11th, 1919, and this was Armistice Day, was originally what it was called. Of course, that is the day that fighting stopped in World War I, the 11th day of the 11th month at the 11th hour. That is when the fighting stopped. The war actually didn't officially end until June of next year, but that is when the fighting started, and it was considered the war to end all wars. Now, officially, Congress recognized the end of World War II, as I said, in 1926 on June 4th, but on the November 11th, 1918, I apologize for my reading, was the end of the fighting. And so this became the date, and it wasn't until I believe a couple years later that it became an official holiday, and there have been several progressions through the years, but of course it is all based on the end of World War I, when the fighting ended, not when the war officially ended. Again, we will be bringing you the ceremony out from J-Bear here in just a few minutes, and thank you so much for your patience. Thank you all for your patience. Again, we had originally thought that this was beginning at 10:30. We've been told that it is starting at about 10:45, and we are going to have a picture here in just a few moments. But what we're expecting is Major General Torrance Sachs. He is with the Alaska National Guard and Commissioner of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. He is hosting a Veterans Day ceremony at the Alaska National Guard Armory on Joint Base Elemendorf. It is going to honor the men and women who have served in the armed forces, and we're also expecting an announcement of the 2024 Governor's Veterans Advocacy Award recipient. And we are going to check in and take this. Looks like it is beginning now.
Test. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Forrest Powell, and it's a privilege to be your master of ceremonies for today's event as we pay tribute to our veterans and their families. The presiding official for today's ceremony is the Adjutant General of Alaska, Major General Torrance Sachs, accompanied by his wife, Clara. At this time, I would like to extend a warm welcome to the Honorary Consul Marianne Peace from the Honorary Consul of Canada in Anchorage, Honorary Consul Dr. Didi Hitchens from the Honorary Consul of the United Kingdom in Anchorage, the Honorable, Greg Kaplan representing Senator Lisa Murkowski, Abby Brown representing Senator Dan Sullivan, President Aaron Leggett, Native Village of Eklutna, Alaska State Senators and State Legislators, Brigadier General David Moore, Alaska NORAD Regional Deputy Commander, Mrs. Catherine Hardy, Interim Nurse Executive, Alaska Veterans Affairs Healthcare. And lastly, we would like to extend a special welcome to all senior officers, civilians, commanders, state sergeant majors, chiefs, veterans and their families, and friends. Welcome and thank you all so much for coming to this event. The Glacier Brass Band will now begin our program with a medley of patriotic music. Please stand and be recognized when you hear your service song. All right, great job. To all of you. Now, did any of you pick out the Space Force song? I was hoping that somebody from the Space Force would stand, because that's an anomaly. I want to see what they look like. I want to see that. I want to see that uniform. That's what I want to see. I'm looking forward to that when the time comes in the years to come. Please stand if you can for the entrance of the colors, and remain standing for the singing of the National Anthem of Canada, the National Anthem of the United States, and the Alaska Flag Song.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love and all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Each stars of gold on a field of blue, Alaska's flag may it mean to you. The blue of the sea, the evening sky, the mountains, lakes, and the flowers nearby. The gold of the early sourdough streams, the precious gold of the hills and streams, the brilliant stars in the northern sky, the Bear, the Dipper, and shining high, the great North Star with its steady light, o'er land and sea, a beacon bright. Alaska's flag to Alaskans dear, the simple flag of the last frontier. what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Honor Guard, post colors. Thank you, Alaska Military Youth Academy cadets. Chaplain Miller will now give the invocation.
Good morning, and thank you for honoring our vets today with your presence here. As I pray according to my understanding of prayer, I would invite you to share this moment with me according to your understanding. Our gracious God and Heavenly Father, we gather here to honor those who have given selfless service to their nation, their state, their families, neighbors, and one another. Many have given more than what can adequately be acknowledged or articulated. They have given of themselves for the defense of the unique and extraordinary liberties embodied in the uniforms they wore. They have blessed those who thought differently, looked differently, and came from different backgrounds and places. They served our nation with distinction and with valor. We now ask for your blessing on them as they have served. We ask that they find comfort, strength, compassion, and peace in their pursuits in life. We ask they will feel the genuine gratitude of each of us who are in their debt of service. We ask that their families know our gratitude for their sacrifices in the defense of liberty. We ask that this ceremony validates their sacrificial service in a meaningful way. We now ask your blessing on those gathered here today. No matter who we are or where we are from, we are grateful for the freedoms this country provides. Freedoms that allow us to think, to worship, and to live according to the dictates of our conscience. Freedoms that give hope to our world that there is something higher and better to reach for. Freedoms that stand opposed to tyranny and oppression. Freedoms that give opportunities to become the best of who we can be. This is the service that we honor and ask for your blessings today. In your almighty name, amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Verdi Bowen to read the Governor of Alaska's proclamation.
Our nation was built upon the belief that all citizens are guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The freedoms we enjoy and the values we hold dear as Americans come at a cost. So as a nation, we must take the time to express our sincerest gratitude to our veterans for preserving our rights and for fighting to protect the liberty of others. And we celebrate these heroes on the 11th day of the 11th month in tribute to the temporary cessation of hostility in 1918 at 11 a.m. when the Allied powers and Germans signed the armistice that would end World War I. 20 years later, this day became a federally recognized holiday to celebrate all United States veterans involved in armed conflict, and we honor our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, National Guard members, reservists, as these remarkable individuals have helped protect us and have inspired our nation with their courage, compassion, and dedication. And we are eternally indebted to our veterans for their remarkable and valiant service to the United States of America, and we will never forget their selfless allegiance and willingness to put their lives on the line to defend the freedoms of our democracy, and we reflect on the immeasurable burdens endured by so few in the defense of so many, and dedicate ourselves to support those who have served our nation and the families who stood alongside them, including those who are still serving today and those who will serve in the future. Now, therefore, I, Mike Dunleavy, Governor of the State of Alaska, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2024 as Veterans Remembrance Day in Alaska and call on all Alaskans to participate in appropriate ceremonies and expressions of gratitude to honor our veterans for their service, encourage employers to provide job opportunities for those who served, and applaud the incredible bravery of our veterans and members of the United States Armed Forces, dated November 11, 2024.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ms. Catherine Hardy to read the message from President Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Good morning, and thank you for this honor today. Today we honor generations of American veterans, patriots who have stood on the front lines of freedom and kept the light of liberty shining bright around the world. Just as they have kept the ultimate faith in the nation, we must keep the ultimate faith in them. Each one of our nation's veterans is a link to a chain that honor stretches back to our founding days, bound by a sacred oath to support and defend the United States of America. Throughout history, whenever and wherever the forces of darkness have sought to extinguish the flame of freedom, America's veterans have been fighting to keep it burning bright. I remember so clearly the pride that First Lady and I felt in our son Bo during his service in Iraq. He, like all our veterans from Belleau Wood, Baghdad, and Gettysburg to Guadalcanal, Korea, and Kandahar, and beyond, lived, served, and sacrificed by the creative duty. We owe them a debt of gratitude we can never fully repay, not just for fighting for our democracy, but for giving back to our communities and inspiring the next generation to serve even after they hang up their uniforms. As a nation, we have one truly sacred obligation: to prepare and equip those we send into harm's way and to care for them and their families when they return home. Since I came into office, I have signed more than 34 bipartisan laws to support our veterans and their families, caregivers, and survivors. This includes the landmark Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson honoring our promise to address comprehensive toxins PACT Act, which enacted the most significant expansion of benefits and services for veterans exposed to toxins in more than 30 years. Today, more than 1.1 million veterans and 11,000 survivors of deceased veterans are now receiving new service-connected disability benefits, and over 5.8 million veterans have been screened for toxic exposure, a critical step to ensuring they get access to the care that they need. And as of last March, any exposed veteran who served during any conflict outlined in the PACT Act will be able to enroll in the Department of Veterans Affairs VA Health Care. My administration is ensuring that women veterans enrolled in the Department of Veterans Affairs Health Care have equitable access and benefits to health services. My administration has worked to reduce barriers to reach out to veterans and make sure they can access their earned benefits. As a result, the VA is delivering more benefits to more veterans than ever before. In 2024, the VA processed more claims than ever and is providing record-level healthcare services. We have taken steps to eliminate barriers and disparities for all veterans, including people of color, LGBTQ+ people, and women. We have made progress in addressing veteran homelessness, and we are working to end the silent scourge of suicide by addressing financial and legal risk factors, promoting secure storage of firearms, and expanding access to mental health services. Last year, the VA housed nearly 48,000 veterans, expanded access to health care and legal assistance for homeless veterans, and helped more than 158,000 veterans and their families keep their homes. And we are committed to assisting the roughly 200,000 service members who transition from the military each year with finding good-paying jobs, including by connecting them to registered apprenticeship programs. My administration has also prioritized supporting veteran entrepreneurship. This year, service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses secured almost $32 billion in federal contracts, nearly $4 billion more than the prior year. While our veterans are the steel spine of the nation, their families are the courageous heart. They also serve and sacrifice so much for our country. Last year, I signed an executive order calling for the most comprehensive set of administrative actions in our nation's history to support the economic security of military and veteran spouses, caregivers, and survivors. The executive order increases training and employment opportunities for military spouses in the workforce and encourages federal agencies to do more to retain military and veteran spouses through flexible policies. Additionally, through the First Lady's Joining Forces initiative, my administration is working to better support military and veteran families on everything from making school transitions easier for military children to expanding economic opportunities and improving well-being for military spouses, caregivers, and survivors. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to visit Normandy to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day alongside so many World War II veterans. Their service and sacrifice helped free the world from tyranny. We learned that what we still know now, democracy is never guaranteed. Every generation must preserve it, defend it, and fight for it. Today, we honor all our veterans who have preserved, defended, and fought for our democracy. They prove that we are a nation that can meet darkness with light again and again, no matter how high the cost or how heavy the burden. May we all be worthy of their sacrifices for us, doing our part to keep the light of liberty burning bright in generations to come. In respect and recognition of the contributions our veterans and their families, caregivers, and survivors have made to the cause of peace and freedom around the world, the Congress has provided that November 11 of each year shall be set aside as a legal public holiday to honor our nation's veterans. Now, therefore, I, Joseph Biden, Jr., President of the United States of America, do hereby proclaim November 11, 2024 as Veterans Day. I encourage all Americans to recognize the valor, courage, and sacrifice of these patriots through appropriate ceremonies and private prayers, and by observing 2 minutes of silence for our nation's veterans. I also call upon federal, state, and local officials to display the flag of the United States of America and to participate in patriotic activities in their communities. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand the 6th day of November in the year of our Lord 2024, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 249th. Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
I'd like to call up Ferdy Bowen to give remarks regarding the Be Known. On the back of your program, there's something that says Be Known. He'll talk about that for a moment, and then introduce our keynote speaker.
You know, it's great is to get something on the back of your agenda there. We just discussed Friday. So, you know, Forrest must have already known this before we got to Fairbanks to discuss this in a meeting. But you know, the great thing about veterans is this. You know, I was thinking this morning as I was driving in, you know what really makes us actually collectively, what makes us, you could call us brothers and sisters? It starts with 27 words. Can you believe that? And it starts off with you state your name. Do you remember that in basic for most of you people? I state my name, swear to defend the Constitution of the United States. The greatest thing about that is that immediately brought you into a fraternity that you can never get out of. And I see Abby sitting up here. We tease the Marines about that because you're always a Marine. You never get out. In reality, that's the way it is. We're always that way. But you know, the greatest thing about veterans is their heart of service. You know, when we're in the military, we're trained to be service before self. And then when we get out, we turn that heart into service. And we continuously do that no matter where we go. I mean, it's just part of our second nature. And so the hardest thing that we have with veterans is this, is that, you know, they serve everywhere throughout our community. Just stop someone serving somewhere and ask them if they've served, and you're going to hear a yes. You most likely will, whether it's the PTA, whether it's a basketball coach, whether it's working at one of our parks. The problem that we have is the Be Known campaign is something new that we're coming up with this next year, is because we have a lot of veterans out there that nobody knows who they are because they don't tell anybody they served. And so the biggest thing is that if we know they served and we're able to provide them the benefits as they come out, because you just heard about the PACT Act, that is huge. We still have people in our state that have benefits packages that are huge and they don't know. So what we're trying to do is reach out to them so that they can be known to their community so everybody knows who they are. I don't want them serving in silence anymore. I want them to open up and say, yes, I did serve in the military. The hardest thing is that when we meet the families at Fort Ridge National Cemetery, and that is just days before is when the spouse found out that their veteran had served. And that is not the time for them to find. They should discover that long before that period of time. It isn't that we're ashamed of service. Most of the people that's in the military, they get out of the service and they do the first thing, and we hear this every day, we're saving that benefit for our friend. You can't save a benefit that belongs to you to give to someone else. That just doesn't work that way. That's just like going to basic training. Someone else doesn't go through basic training for you. You have to do that yourself. It's quite an experience. And so with that, I want to go into the next person that has a beautiful heart of service. And I can do this to the Adjutant General. We've been serving together quite some time, even through COVID. We've had great times together working to ensure that all of our veterans come through and receive the benefits that they deserve. We've traveled across the whole state of Alaska, and I don't think there's a place that we haven't stopped at or flown over the last few years. And so
we have been around.
We've been around, and I'm telling you that if you're a veteran in this state and you haven't seen us, then you probably were taking a nap or you just didn't show up at the event. So I just want to introduce Adjutant General Torrance Sachs.
Well, thanks, Verdi. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate you being here. A lot of work went into putting this on, so I do want to say a couple things for the people who did this. Verdi, obviously great job, and we have the golden voice behind us with Forrest. Thank you once again. But Glacier Brass up on the catwalk, if we please give them a round of applause. That was good. Great job, guys. And also for the folks that did the posting of the flag from the Youth Academy, great job as always. And for, round of applause for that. That was excellent, really good, professional. And for the national anthem and state song, I don't think you could have done better. Great job, all three of you. Yeah. So I'm going to get your names for the Youth Academy, but is it Emmanuel Hansen? Is that your name? All right, so someone told me your name before the ceremony, and I guess he just walked in and they needed a singer for Canada, and he said, I know the words, bring him on up. So great job. So a couple things to talk about today, and we're going to get into the meaning of Veterans Day and my view on the military, my view on service. But before we get into it, I've already mentioned the Constitution. The Constitution starts out with we the people. It is about the people. It is about the people you serve. It is about the family within the military, but of course it's about your real family as well. And I normally start these ceremonies and I ask who the youngest member is in the military. I'm not sure if we have anyone who's at E1 through E4. I'll find that out, but I think I know who the oldest veteran is here today. And one of the reasons that we were a little delayed in starting the ceremony, sir, I want to make sure that you were able to come. So, Louis Gigliotti, you go by Jigs. You are 103. Okay, yeah. So, please, yes, stand. Thanks, everybody. It is becoming, unfortunately, rarer and rarer to have a World War II veteran, but that's exactly what he is. And just a little background, been in Alaska for a very long time. He tried to enlist, 2 of his friends did enlist, and unfortunately, they were killed during Pearl Harbor. You eventually did enlist, and you did your duty here stateside for World War II. But on behalf of all of us, I just want to say sincere thanks. I want to get to know you a little bit better. I understand your hobbies are mushing and you were a boxing coach for many years, so that's impressive in itself. But again, on behalf of all of us, we can't thank you enough for your service. It is wonderful to have you here, and we are honored by your presence. I have a coin for you. And before I go too much further, of course, I want to thank our Canadian counterparts. General Moore, good to see you. Chief, everybody here from the military. And I did notice there were 3 people that stood for the Marine song, and there's 2 here in the front row. So Greg and Abby, good to see you. And all the elected officials, I cannot thank you so much for being here. It shows that you care, you support this community. And of course, I'm going to say Sergeant Major Small, and oh my gosh, I'm not going to forget this time my wife, Clara, who is an Army combat vet. Glad to have you here as well. And I think I saw my kids back there. I do have a daughter, Victoria, a veteran as well. So let's talk about Alaska. Let's talk about veterans. We are different. We are different in the sense that we have 13 times the normal number. I say normal number of veterans as compared to the lower 48. We're 13% veterans. Normally, it's 1%. And of that, it's about 15% that are female veterans. So we have a very high percentage all around looking forward to as what we can and should do within the state to recognize the veterans. I also want to say I heard a study several years ago that if you have 1 degree of separation, you may have heard that 1 degree of separation for Kevin Bacon, but if you have that 1 degree of separation for the military here, it's upwards of 40% of the state that is connected to the military. So that could be a husband, a father, a daughter, etc. Lots of folks here. So that is one way we're certainly unique. But as far as what it means for Veterans Day, going back to 1918, we recognize what used to be called Armistice Day. The 11th month, the 11th day, and the 11th hour. Eventually it became Veterans Day in the 1950s, as you heard Verdi talk about, but this is where we recognize all who have raised their hand, all who have said, this we will defend, all who have worn a uniform. Those who have passed, those who are still serving, and even those who are coming up. We don't recognize them today, but we want to put forward the fact that this is an unbroken line of service for our nation. I think for all of us who have worn a uniform, there comes a time when we realize that we would not be here without the folks that came before us. And for me, that came very stark, very loud, very clear when I was a young man coming back from a deployment in the Persian Gulf. And I think there's a couple of people in here old enough to remember, at least for the US military, we have a form called the DD-214. And the way we would have to do it when we were getting out of a deployment or off active status, we we'd have to physically walk to the courthouse and turn in your 214. And with that, I think there was just a recognition, because there were people who wanted me to speak as I was getting back from the Gulf, to speak about what it meant to me. And as I was going up to the courthouse, there was a monument, and it had all the names of the World War I soldiers who had died. I had been by that monument so many times. I had just passed right by it. But as I was going to the courthouse and to turn in my 214, I stopped and I looked at that monument. And I took a long look at all the names, looked it up and down, and I realized that for those young men, they were probably about my age. They all had hopes, they all had dreams, and they were on a monument that was largely forgotten, that was sitting in front of a courthouse in the middle of Washington State. So as I came into the courthouse and I finally dropped off my 214, as I said, I was asked by the local community to give some thoughts on what had happened during my time in the Gulf. Could not think of anything to say except for the fact that the people who had gone before me, and those young men, their hopes, their dreams, they gave them up for future generations, to include myself, that I would be able to go forward, that I would be able to live my freedom, that I'd be able to have my view of the world, and to have that precious freedom that we hear so much about. So I've made it somewhat of a pilgrimage when I go back and I go to see my folks in Washington State. I still, to this day, go back and I pay a little tribute to the monument that you see, because it's become very personal for me, for the people that went before. Now, there's a couple people I do want to talk about today, and some of you may have heard these stories, but Alaska theme, Alaska veterans. So this is something that I had not heard until fairly recently, but you may not be familiar. This happened post-World War II, 1955, here in Alaska. So I know we got a couple Navy people here, and I'm sure you recognize the aircraft, a PV-2. So 1955, we had a Navy crew that was doing just a topography check going over Alaska. They were looking at the weather. They were looking at literally ice flow to make sure our maps were correct. And literally out of the blue, there were 2 Russian MiGs that swooped out of the sky and started firing. No warning whatsoever. I did a little research on this, and this was caught by the people who were manning the radars, but they saw it on their screen back in Anchorage. There was absolutely no warning. So 2 hits right off the bat. 1 hit the fuselage, 1 hit the wing. And of course, as you might expect, this was not anything that was supposed to be on just a routine flight. Unbelievably, even though the aircraft was hit many times, no one within the aircraft in that initial salvo was hit by a bullet. But unfortunately, there was a fireball that started in the back of the airplane. It started going forward. Well, per procedure, the only thing the pilot can do is go very quickly down, descent, to try to get rid of the fire. So he followed procedures and quickly went down. But of course, if you keep going down, you're gonna hit the ground. Nothing to land on and gamble except for tundra with a bunch of rocks. So that's what he did. He did a belly up landing and hit the ground really hard with his crew of 11 people. And unfortunately, that fireball that had been slightly put out, when they hit the ground, that fireball went all the way from the back of the aircraft to the front and burned the entire crew. Barely made it out. But here's where the veterans come into action. So quite literally, the Russian aircraft are circling overhead, and they all think they're going to be strafed and die. The Alaska National Guard and the Alaska Scouts, you've heard the saying, march to the beat of the drum, go to the beat of the drum. Well, they marched and took their seal-skin boats to the MiGs that were flying overhead. So, with the Russian MiGs overhead, the Alaska Scouts went there, hand-powered by and large, picked up the 11 men, put them in the seal-skin boats, and got them back to Gamble, and eventually got them back to Anchorage. Every single person on that aircraft was saved. It became, as you might expect, an absolutely international incident. But as far as the legacy to go forward, you see it there in the slide. All 11 men lived, went on to get married, have families, and to go on with their lives. That's bravery, and that's something that happened right here in the great state of Alaska. So this is just something that we did recently to show the thanks to the people who did it. The person you see on the slide, his name is Bruce Balawan, and he is the last living member of that contingent that went to save the 11 sailors. So pretty neat. Able to give him a couple of things of recognition, but you talk about the passage of time, you see how we all do change. Him as a very young man, and him recently as we presented the Alaska Medal for Heroism. Good. Another story I do want to talk about, and maybe not quite as happy an ending, but also a very Alaska theme, Daniel Harmon. He is an Alaskan, he grew up in Woody Island, very close to Kodiak, and he did enlist in the Army during Vietnam. A little story about him, as he was at Fort Lewis down in Washington State, he actually went AWOL, not because he didn't want to fight, he went AWOL because he wanted to go to Vietnam, and he wasn't going to Vietnam quick enough. So sure enough, he got to go to Vietnam, and his mission at the time, he was what was called a LRP, a long-range reconnaissance patrol, and he was point man. So you think about maybe the movie Platoon, that's exactly what he did. He was the man in charge of getting the infantry one place to another, a small tactic squad. And to his credit, all the missions he had been on for his entire tour, not one person had died. He was coming up on the end of his tour, and his boss came in, and I need you to go on one more. He said, all right, sir, I'll do it. So he went out, and their mission was to do what's called battle damage assessment, to see if the B-52s were doing the intent of bombing and deterring the enemy. Got out there, and he was told repeatedly this was not a hot area. He got onto the ground. The first thing he saw was what were called spider holes. These are small holes that are dug, and the North Vietnamese would stay in the holes and pop up and do what they would do. Next thing they saw, they were coming up on an open clearing, and nothing but North Vietnamese. The place was completely overrun. Their intel had been completely wrong. They took the photos they needed to take. They went to go spend the night, put up claymores all around. In the morning, they called for extraction. Now, what that meant back in the day, normally if you took a helicopter in, you took a helicopter out, but there was no aircraft available. So they were going to have to be extracted via tank. Eventually, the tanks came, and even the people who were coming on the tank said, what do you guys worry about? There's nobody here. And they loaded them on the tanks. They started going down very close to the Cambodian border, and sure enough, on that very road with all the spider holes, and the first tank hit a bomb right off the bat, completely immobile. The second tank was trapped, and the third tank also hit a bomb. Everybody in the entire convoy was completely trapped. And then the nightmare hit. Worst case scenario, people from all sides firing on Danny and all his troops. There was a member of the troops, his name was Daniel Kuhn. And Daniel Kuhn was hit immediately. Daniel went in, grabbed him, and pulled him to safety under the heaviest fire you can imagine. Daniel could have stayed in the ditch, but he didn't. He went back in and tried to save somebody else who was on the tank and completely shot up. And unfortunately, Daniel Harmon was shot 2 times to the chest. Here is the catharsis, the release, the good news story of what Daniel Harmon did. If you see the gentleman in the black jacket in the photo, that is the son of the member that Daniel Harmon saved. And you talk about a living legacy. I went to the memorial, and this man got up 30, 40 years later and gave the most tearful rendition of thanks as to what Daniel Harmon did. That is a legacy of service, and that is something that all of us can understand. Because to show his actions, his selfless service, his bravery under the heaviest of fire, unfortunately Daniel Harmon did pass, but there is something that we can all take away, and that is the thanks of what he did. So it was quite an emotional thing. Now, something I want to read as far as that legacy. Canada has a special recognition, and I see the poppies on your uniform. This is probably something you're going to talk about in your talk, but there's a very famous poem in talking about passing on that torch. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders fields. This is passing the torch. This is what we do as veterans. And to show just that continuing legacy, part of what we do is provide hope. And part of that is through sacrifice. And I'm going to give you a real quick story. Years ago, I was at just an event for one of my kids, and it was a field day. And the strategy for the little kids was, you run that way. And that was essentially the entire strategy. I was in uniform, and there was a little girl who came up to me, didn't know me from Adam, and said, hey, mister, I just want to say thank you for protecting us. That's exactly what I would like to have for everybody here as far as what they view when they see a uniform. And to go forward with what we do in the military, there's a famous saying. It's called Molin Labe. Anyone ever heard of it? It means come and take it. Come and take it. So as veterans on that front line, that's exactly what we need to have as far as an attitude. For those who have come before us, I would like a show of hands. How many veterans do we have who are separated or retired? Just please raise your hands high. I'm here to tell you, I would not be here, we would not be here without what you have done for us. It is very evident to me, the longer I've been in the military, if we didn't have the people who did raise their hand and say, this will defend, we will not have the freedoms that we have today. You have gone before, and that is something I respect. But as far as the American military, we've had somebody on the line, the National Guard since 1636, United States Army since 1775. There has been and of course the Marines, Navy, Coast Guard as well, and now the Space Force. We have had an unbroken line of selfless service since our inception as a nation. And that is why we continue on today. Who will stand in the gap? That's the question for the future generations. Who will stand in the gap? It's all of us working together. And with that, I cannot thank you all enough for coming here today. Thank you for the veterans who have been here, done it before me, before us. Thank you to the Youth Academy and everyone who's put on this event here today. I, of course, want to say thank you to our Canadian brothers and sisters. It's wonderful to have you here and everyone who's on that big team Alaska. And with that, thanks again and have a good day.
Test. Thank you, General Sachs. I'd like to welcome back Ferdy Bowen to announce the Governor's 2024 Veterans Advocacy Award with the assistance of General Sachs.
This year, we have the great honor to announce our 2024 Veteran Advocate Award recipient. And you know, I was talking earlier about heart of service, and I can tell you that there's no bigger heart than what Benno Cleveland carries in his chest. And when he was first introduced to the Army, he was a volunteer in 1968. Many were drafted, but he volunteered. And then he was medically discharged in 1970 after receiving his Purple Heart. But since that time, he's never stopped serving. You know, I was thinking, again, on my way in this morning, I was thinking of statues. Some of you have seen our Alaska Territorial Guard statues around the state in different locations, in Bethel and Juneau, here in Anchorage. Benno Cleveland was the driving force behind those statues and helping receive those funds so that we could have those statues for our Alaskan Territorial Guard members. He's also helped set up the Veterans Court in Fairbanks, which is a key instrument within our community to help our veterans receive the chance that they need to overcome some of their difficulties. And he's also set up the Native Alaska Veterans Association, and he's been a key member in AFN in order for us to have our veterans serve properly at AFN. And we could not do all the things that we do in this state without people like Benno. And with that, come on up, Benno.
And just a few things to say about Benno. I've known you for many years, and we're a small state. You get to know people very well. And one thing you did a couple years ago, you probably don't even remember. We had a fleeting conversation about my back, of all things. Hadn't seen you for an entire year, and you came up, and the first thing you said is, "How's your back?" And that meant a lot to me because it shows you care. I've seen you march troops. You still got that command voice, and we are absolutely grateful for all that you have done for the state and continue to do. So thank you.
Hello. I can do better than that. Hello, hello. That's what today's all about. That's what our nation's all about. We're a nation of many, but a nation of one. And when we raise our voice in unison, loud, we're strong. And it's because of what we're here for today is to honor our veterans, those that made it possible. We also like to acknowledge our active duty members. It's because of our veterans and your services that we as a nation are allowed to practice our freedoms, our way of lives, our ceremonies, our cultural ways, to be as a nation, a strong nation. You know, a lot of people, they wonder why the American Indians and the Alaska Native veterans join more than any other culture. And the answer is very simple. This is still our land, it is still our people, and we will continue to protect our land and our people. And that's one of the things that, to our active military members, we're proud of each and every one of you. You do us proud. And to let you know that you will forever be within our hearts and in our prayers. You know, within our culture, well, within the U.S., when we take off the uniform and we go back to civilian life, we are referred to as veterans. Our people, we look at our veterans not only as veterans, but as our warriors. And they will always continue to be our warriors. And for those that are in active duty, I want you to know you are our warriors and you will continue to be that. That oath that we took, there's no expiration date. That oath is until the time that we pass over to another world. So I want to thank AVAC for the honor that they've bestowed upon me. And then hopefully I can continue to work towards trying to better and help other veterans along the way and pave the way for those that are yet to follow us. Koyana, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Benno. It's my privilege to introduce you to the Alaska NORAD Region Deputy Commander, Brigadier General David Moore.
Hey, thanks very much. See if we can get a little more volume on the microphone. That's great. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks. Bino taught us all well. Hey, on that, Bino, very honored to spend some time with you a couple of weeks ago at AFN. I witnessed firsthand the power of your advocacy for our veterans, for the Native community, and all the amazing things that you did. So congratulations for that award. It was a real honor to meet you and spend some time with you a few weeks ago. Hey, everyone, this is my first Veterans Day ceremony. Thank you. Let me tell you, I spend most of my time serving in Canada, and I'm honored here to be in the United States serving with the NORAD region now as a deputy commander, Lieutenant General Cunningham's deputy, and unfortunately General Cunningham couldn't be here today because he's out of state. Two things I'd like to say just about the ceremony. First, thank you so much for the inclusion of Canada as an ally in this ceremony, for the effort you've put towards reinforcing, towards advertising, supporting that relationship. It's kind of what I'm going to talk about today, but it's very apparent here today. And thank you very much for the wonderful anthem, Canadian anthem, for the flag, for the inclusion in your program, and for the words, General Sachs. Really meaningful to your Canadian allies. So thank you for that. Hey, the second thing that I'd say is when I look around this room, sometimes I think a characteristic of the older generation, which I include myself as, is that we wonder what the future looks like. We wonder who's going to step into the gap and who's going to fill that. And as I look around this room, it's unlike anything I've seen in previous ceremonies that I've attended. Look at the number of youth that we have in this room who are obviously dedicated. They understand the importance of what they've joined. They understand the importance of what we all do or what we've all done here in this room. So thank you, youth, to participating in this. The importance of your participation and the way that you see the future is so important to all of us and the future of our nations. So thank you for that. Give our youth a hand, please. So I started out with a good morning to our veterans, most importantly, General Sachs. Thank you for your kind words and for teeing up a few things that you reminded me that I should talk about here today. Thanks to our elected officials. Thanks to Abby and Greg for representing all of our distinguished visitors and our senior military, whether serving or retired. Thank you very much for having me here. To our honorary consuls, to Marianne Pease and Honorary Consul Hitchens, thank you very much for being here representing Canada and the UK here today. To Jigs, sir, I look forward to meeting you after this ceremony. Thank you very much for your service, and as General Sachs said, the number of veterans that we have that were able to serve in World War II is not as many as it has been in the past, and reducing every single year. It's a true honor. I look forward to meeting you, sir. Thank you for your service and for what you have done for our nations. It's a real privilege to be here with you today on what I call a sacred occasion. I like to differentiate a little bit between, and we heard the history of how Armistice Day became Veterans Day and Memorial Day in the United States. In Canada, we just have one ceremony, Remembrance Day. And so today's a somber day. Not always a day of celebration, although we do that too to celebrate our veterans. But we also celebrate those that we've lost. So it's a real privilege to be here as we gather to remember, to recognize and honor those who have served in the armed forces of the United States, but also Canada and the United Kingdom and our allies. On this Veterans Day, a day when we pause to reflect on the sacrifices made by the brave women and men who wore our uniforms of our respective nations, we come together as citizens of our individual nations, but as brother in arms as well, or brothers and sisters in arms, united in a shared commitment to freedom and peace. So thank you for that. As a Canadian officer, it's a profound honor to be standing here with you today in this remarkable place, Alaska, that I've come to appreciate over the last 18 months that I've served here. It's a place that has proven in the past and then continues to prove its importance to global security, to the defense of North America, to the economies of the world. It's a land that has seen significant hardship, but also significant heroism, and we heard some of those stories from General Sachs here today. And it's a place that bears all the indelible marks of the strong ties that bind our two nations, Canada and the United States, together. And even though that we're separated by a national border, we Canadians and Americans have long been allies, partners in arms, protectors of liberty, defenders of democracy. And I could go on at length on that theme. But today, as we stand here united on this day of remembrance, as I described, it's essential that we remind ourselves that we share so much more than just geographical proximity, the fact that we're beside each other. We share a lot of history, and a history of collaboration, of joint sacrifice, and of unwavering commitments to the principles of freedom, equality, and justice. And as we look towards our past, we should see it as instructive to our future. This is how we're going to defend North America, the United States, and Canada in our future. And it's those values that have driven the veterans that we honor here today to stand tall in the face of adversity. They answered the call not because it was easy, but because it was the right thing to do for them at the time. And they believed in something greater than themselves, and that's something that joins us all in this room here today, that we believe that is important. These are the values that our militaries and our service members share. Today, as was mentioned, so throughout the Commonwealth, a lot of other Commonwealth nations, including Canada, we hold Remembrance Day to mark the end of hostilities in World War I. And as General Sachs said, we mark that on the 11th month of the 11th day and the 11th hour from 1918, when the hostilities ended. Today, the act of remembrance honors all veterans, the fallen and the living. And the symbol of Remembrance Day is the poppy, and General Sachs set me up well for this one. I wear a poppy here today, and all Canadians do, after a poem that was written by a Canadian doctor, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, during his service in World War I, and his reference to the grave sites in Flanders Field in Belgium and the poppies that marked that field. And in fact, after the war, poppies were the only thing that would grow in those fields. From 1914 to 1918, Flanders Fields was a major battle theater on the Western Front during the First World War, and 1 million soldiers from more than 50 different countries were wounded, missing, or killed in action there, including 60,000 Canadian dead and hundreds of thousands of British dead. Flanders Field is the site of the only American military World War I cemetery in Belgium, and it's the final resting place for 368 of the many American soldiers who died during the Allied efforts to liberate Belgium. Flanders Fields, really represents a terrible war and a terrible time of the war, and there's been a lot written about it, but it also represents the strength and importance of alliances, including those shared with the United States and Canada. Today as we look around at the world, we talk about the increasing global nature of conflict, about wars getting bigger, about more instability in the world. We also talk about the increasing strategic importance of Alaska and where we sit here today. Well, during World War II, we very clearly saw the increasing global nature of conflicts and the importance of Alaska. As war in the Pacific quickly spread and became a threat to homeland defense and security. And here in Alaska, we experienced attacks and Japanese occupation along the Aleutian Islands, Attu and Kiska, as Japan tried to gain forward basing to further threaten the west coast of North America. And it was actually a combined force of United States and Canadian airmen, soldiers, and sailors, Alaskan Territorial Guard, Alaskan natives who fought back and reclaimed Alaska and defended North America. And it's an amazing story, and there's a lot of amazing stories from that time, but an amazing story, and stands as an example of the cooperation, commitment, and human resolve that it takes to defend the homeland. And there's something to learn there, or maybe remember, if we didn't learn it, but maybe remember as we look forward to future challenges. One of the most loyal things that we can do for our nations is to ensure that the lessons that were hard learned through sacrifice by our veterans, their gains, are carried forward to the next generations, the youth that you see sitting in the room here with you today. So today we honor those brave men and women, living and gone, who are willing to sacrifice their lives and protect ours. And later today, we are going to honor the Canadian and British airmen and soldiers who lost their lives fighting here in Alaska during World War II and are actually buried here in the Fort Richardson Cemetery. So just in closing, again, thank you very much for the honor and the privilege of taking some time to address you here today. Thank you to those who have paved the road that we walk today and honor those that continue to serve. As a Canadian serving in Alaska alongside the most capable military force in the world, I'm incredibly proud and grateful to you all. So thank you very much.
Thank you, General Moore. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend Joshua Rivak and Schaefer Mueller for a short song.
Yeah, that works. Happy Veterans Day, everybody. Yeah, thank you. One more time. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you. Congratulations, Benno. .45 from a dead-end job and traffic stop. Somehow life's still passing me by. Pull off and park and I wanna end it all. Then I saw Gordon walking by. That's when my demons and fears turn to freedom and tears. I put it down and follow. Stepped to the edge and a voice said the park strip flag. Gordon comes here once a week. The sun gets low and he comes to peace with God. And every time he gets up to leave, he wipes the names and he pulls the grass away before he salutes the flag. It's my life day, the flag's much more than a banner flying. It's God, it's country, fellow man. A light up on the hill, it leads the way. Oh, and all these things we symbolize, you can see them clear in Gordon's eyes. A brotherhood that only fellow veterans know. Every day is Veterans Day at the Park Strip Flag. Shines the pins and medals on his hat. They tell the story of his life. The war-torn Bronze Star ribbons and Purple Hearts. He served us since 1945. I thought there was nowhere to go, but Gordon knows that the flag is always home. And he don't pay no mind to passerby. Sometimes kids, they smirk and laugh. sacrifice. Make it worth the price. Oh, it's so much more than a better flying. It's God and its country and fellow man. To light up on the hill that leads the way. Oh, in all these things we civilize, I could see him clear in Gordon's eyes. A brotherhood that only fellow veterans know. Every day is Veterans Day at the Park Strip flag. Every day is Veterans Day at the Park Strip flag. Every day is Veterans Day at the Park Strip.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Safer. Do it this way. 3 wars. That's what Gordon did. Is there anybody else here that did three wars? No? Gordon, please stand and be recognized. World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I'm not going to tell you how many Purple Hearts he has. I think one's enough, but it's Gordon. He's always coming back. It is with sincere gratitude and honor that we gather here today to pay tribute to our veterans. We are grateful for their service. We also would like to honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. To show our respect to our brothers and sisters in arms, the Joint Forces Honor Guard will conduct the Fallen Warrior ceremony. Since ancient times, soldiers paid their respect to fallen warriors by erecting a small monument on the battlefield, comprised of their battle gear and weapons to mark the passing of a fellow warrior, and to let others know that the sacrifice should not be easily forgotten. Time has changed, but not the ritual. And although the sword has been replaced with the rifle, this symbol of reverence to those who have passed before us continues to this day. Our first, a soldier, carries a fallen warrior's weapon, represented by this rifle. Our second, an airman, carries a fallen warrior's armor, represented by this helmet. Our third, a soldier, carries our fallen warriors' dog tags. The dog tags are in representation of Alaska's fallen warriors. Our fourth, a Coast Guardsman, their boots, which represents the willingness to travel to defend our country's freedom. Our fifth, a sailor, carries a red rose that symbolizes the blood that our warriors shed and also carries a black rose that symbolizes our mourning. This is our salute to our nation's heroes. You are not forgotten. Thank you all, and please be seated. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to remain seated as we invite the official party to come forward and lay their wreaths. Once the official party has placed their wreaths, others will be invited to do so. I call forward Major General Sachs, Brigadier General Moore, Lieutenant Colonel Hansel Packer, and Honorary Consul Mary Ann Peace. I apologize, and also Catherine Hardy. The first wreath is laid by Major General Sachs on behalf of the state of Alaska. Brigadier General David Moore will lay a wreath on behalf of Alaska Command 11th Air Force. Lieutenant Colonel Hansel Packer and Honorary Consul Mary Ann Peace will lay a wreath on behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces in Alaska. Interim Nurse Executive Catherine Hardy on behalf of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. I now call forward Mr. Greg Kaplan. Other officials, elected officials, and those representing elected officials may now place their wreaths, as well as military officials may now place their wreaths, and anyone else who wishes to do so. Please rise, if you are able to, for the taps, and remain standing as we observe a moment of silence for our fallen. The benediction will now be given by Chaplain Miller.
Please receive this blessing. Our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our heart is glad in him because we trust in his holy name. Let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us, even as we hope in you. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace. Amen and amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony today. We thank you all for joining us to honor all those who have served and those who have passed. Please drive careful today and have a great Veterans Day. Bye-bye.
And that was the Veterans Day ceremony held out at J-Bear at the Alaska National Guard Armory. We thank you so much for staying with us. And happy Veterans Day. We will have more content throughout the day, and of course on alaskasnewssource.com and on Alaska's News Source for this evening at 4, 5, 6, and 10. And don't forget, if you have a veteran that you would like to share with us, go to our website, alaskasnewssource.com, and in the Submit Photos and Videos portion, if you have a personal photo, not a professional one taken, but a personal photo of your veteran, we would love to have that posted there, and we'll be able to share a few of those throughout the day. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.